They would only weigh her down, and what would she buy out here in the Badlands? Dirt? That was all there was, and it was free. They had a few scraps of food with them, but not enough even for another day. That meant there must be others, probably lots of them, and not far away. Yulwei was telling the truth, but it made no difference to her. She turned and started to walk southward, down off the hill and towards the great desert, leaving the old man behind.
"That's the wrong way,"
he said. She stopped, squinting at him in the bright sun.
"Aren't the soldiers coming?"
Yulwei's eyes sparkled.
"There are many ways of staying unnoticed, even out here in the Badlands."
She looked to the north, out over the featureless plain below, out towards Gurkle. There wasn't a hill or a tree, or scarcely a bush for miles, nowhere to hide.
"Unnoticed, even by an eater?"
The old man laughed.
"Especially by those arrogant swine. They're not half as clever as they think they are. How do you think I got here? I came through them, between them, around them. I go where I please, and I take who I please with me."
She shaded her eyes with her hand and squinted southward. The desert stretched away into the far distance and beyond. Pharaoh could survive here in the wilderness, just about, but out there in that crucible of changing sands and merciless heat. The old man seemed to read her thoughts.
"There are always the endless sands. I have crossed them before. It can be done, but not by you."
He was right, Daniel. Pharaoh was lean and tough as a bowstring, but that just meant she would walk in circles a little longer. The desert was preferable to the cave before the palace as a place to die, but not by much. She wanted to stay alive. There were still things to do. The old man sat there, cross-legged, smiling. What was he? Pharaoh trusted no one, but if he meant to deliver her to the Emperor, he could have knocked her on the head while she was digging, instead of announcing his arrival. He had magic. She had seen that for herself. And some chance was better than none. But what would he want in return? The world had never given Pharaoh anything for free, and she didn't expect him to begin now. She narrowed her eyes.
"What do you want from me, Yulwei?"
The old man laughed. That laugh.
"Let us just say that I will have done you a favor. Later on, you can do me one in return."
That answer was horribly thin on the details, but when your life's on the table, you have to take whatever's offered. She hated to place herself in the power of another. It seemed she had no choice. Not if she wanted to live out the week.
"What do we do?" "We must wait for nightfall."
Yulwei glanced at the twisted bodies scattered about the ground and wrinkled his nose.
"But perhaps not here."
Pharaoh shrugged and sat herself down on the next grave.
"Here will do," she said. "I've a mind to watch the vultures eat."
Overhead, the clear night sky was scattered with bright stars, and the air had turned cool, cold even. Down on the dark and dusty plain below, fires were burning, a curved line of fires that seemed to hem them in against the edge of the desert. She, Yulwei, the 10 corpses, and the 3 graves were trapped on the hillside. Tomorrow, as the first light crept over the arid land, the soldiers would leave those fires and creep carefully towards the hills. If Pharaoh was still there when they arrived, she would be killed for sure, or worse still, captured. She could not fight that many on her own, even supposing there was no eater with them. She hated to admit it, but her life was in Yulwei's hands now. He squinted up at the starry sky.
"It is time,"
he said. They scrambled down the rocky hillside in the darkness, picking their way carefully among the boulders and the odd scrubby, half-dead bush. Northwards, towards Gurkle. Yulwei moved surprisingly fast, and she was forced to half-run to keep up, eyes fixed on the ground to find her footing among the dry rocks. When they finally reached the base of the hill and she looked up, she saw that Yulwei was leading her toward the left-hand edge of the line, where the fires were most numerous. "Wait!" she whispered, grabbing his shoulder. She pointed over to the right-hand side. There were fewer fires there, and it would be easier to slip between them. "What about that way?" She could just see Yulwei's teeth smiling white in the starlight.
"Oh no, Pharaoh Maojin. That is where most of the soldiers are, and our other friends."
He was making no attempt to keep his voice down, and it was making her jumpy.
"That is where they expect you to come through if you choose to go north. But they do not expect you. They think you will go south into the desert to die, rather than risk being captured, as indeed you would have done had I not been here."
Yulwei turned and moved off, and she crept after him, keeping low to the ground. As they drew nearer to the fires, she saw that the old man had been right. There were figures sitting around some of them, but they were thinly spread. The old man strode confidently toward 4 fires on the far left, only one of them manned. He made no effort to stay low. His bangles jingled softly together, his bare feet flapped loud on the dry earth. They were almost close enough to see the features of the 3 men round the fire. Yulwei would surely be seen at any moment. She hissed at him to grab his attention, sure that she would be heard. Yulwei turned round, looking puzzled in the faint light of the flames. "What?" She winced, waiting for the soldiers to leap up, but they chattered on regardless. Yulwei looked over at them.
"They will not see us, nor hear us either, unless you start shouting in their ears. We are safe."
He turned and walked on, giving the soldiers a wide berth. Pharaoh followed, still keeping low and quiet, if only out of habit. As Pharaoh came closer, she began to make out the words of the soldiers' conversation. She slowed, listening. She turned. She started to move towards the fire. Yulwei looked round.
"What are you doing?"
he asked. Pharaoh looked at the 3 of them, a big, tough-looking veteran, a thin, weaselly type, and an honest-seeming young man who didn't look much like a soldier. Their weapons were lying around, sheathed, wrapped up, unready. She circled them warily, listening. "They say she's not right in the head," the thin one was whispering at the young one, trying to scare him. "They say she's killed 100 men or more. If you're a good-looking fella, she cuts your fruits off while you're still alive." He grabbed hold of his crotch, "and eats them in front of you."
"Ah, stop your mouth," said the big one. "She won't be coming near us."
He pointed over to where the fires were sparser, his voice dropping to a whisper.
"She'll be going to him, if she comes this way at all."
"Well, I hope she doesn't," said the young one. "Live and let live, say I." The thin man frowned. "And what about all the good men she's killed? And women and children, too? Shouldn't they have been let live?" Pharaoh's teeth ground together. She'd never killed children that she could think of. "Well, it's a shame for them, of course. I'm not saying she shouldn't be caught." The young soldier glanced around nervously. "Just maybe not by us." The big man let go a laugh at that, but the thin one didn't look amused. "You a coward?" "No," said the young man angrily. "But I got a wife and family depending on me, and I could do without being killed out here, that's all." He grinned. "We're expecting another child. Hoping for a son this time." The big man nodded. "My son's nearly grown now. They get old so quick." Children, families, and hopes only made the fury in Pharaoh's chest squeeze harder.
Stand aside. I must finish this.
Jorah, he's defeated.
He is my brother. He is my responsibility.
Jorah, you have my sympathy.
This was the only way it could end. The curse is lifted. For both me and Svanir, I think. You have helped me. I shall help you.
Good. We need to unite the other Norn to fight the destroyers.
I fear my words will carry little weight. I have my brother's blood on my hands.
If you can't influence the Norn, then who can?
Olaf, the sevenfold son of Olaf, is esteemed by many. As for me, I must seek Egil, who tells tales by the flame, to fully redeem my family's name.
Olaf it is, then. I need to talk to a Norn leader.
Norn do not have leaders, dwarf. Only heroes.
Jorah, we can aid you and seek out allies. Let us help you with your burdens.
You have the spirit of a Norn, human. I am proud to call you friend.
Why should they be allowed a life when she had nothing? When them and their kind had taken everything from her? She slid the curved knife out of its sheath.
Who goes there?
"What are you doing, Pharaoh?" hissed Yulway. The young man looked round. "Did
Why
you
are
hear
you
something?"
here?
The big one laughed.
I think I heard you shit yourself.
The thin one chuckled to himself. The young man smiled, embarrassed. Pharaoh crept right up behind him.
Never anger a
She was
Norn.
just a foot or two away, brightly lit by the fire, but none of the soldiers even glanced at her. She raised the knife.
Pharaoh!
Shouted Yulway. The young man sprang to his feet. He peered out across the dark plain, squinting, brow furrowed. He looked Pharaoh right in the face, but his eyes were focused far behind her. She could smell his breath. The blade of the knife glittered an inch or less from his stubbly throat. Now was the time. She could kill him quickly and take the other two as well before the alarm was raised. She knew she could do it. They were unprepared and she was ready. Now was the time. But her hand didn't move.
What's got up your ass? Asked the big soldier. There's nothing out there.
Could have sworn I heard something, said the young man, still looking right in her face. Wait! Shouted the thin one, jumping to his feet and pointing. There she is, right in front of you! Pharaoh froze for an instant, staring at him. Then he and the big man started to laugh. The young soldier looked sheepish, turned around and sat down. I thought I heard something, that's all.
There's no one out there,
said the big man. Pharaoh began to back slowly away. She felt sick, her mouth full of sour spit, her head thumping. She pushed the knife back into its sheath, turned, and stumbled off, with Yulway following silently behind. When the light of the fires and the
hunting
sound
something?
of the talking had faded into the distance, she stopped and dropped down on the hard ground. A cold wind blew up across the barren plain. It blew stinging dust in her face, but she hardly noticed. The hate and the fury were gone, for the time being, but they had left a hole, and she had nothing else to fill it with. She felt empty and cold and sick and alone. She hugged herself, rocking slowly back and forth, and closed her eyes, but the darkness held no comfort. Then she felt the old man's hand press onto her shoulder. Now normally she would have twisted away, thrown him off, killed him if she could, but the strength was all gone. She looked up, blinking. There's nothing left of me. What am I? She pressed one hand on her chest, but she barely felt it. I have nothing inside.
Well, it's strange that you should say that.
Yulway smiled up at the starry sky.
I was just starting to think there might be something in there worth saving.
Who sent
Chapter
you?
20. The King's Justice. As soon as he reached the square of marshals, Jezal realized there was something wrong.
It was never half this busy for a meeting of the Open Council. He glanced over the knots of finely dressed people as he hurried by, slightly late and out of breath for his long training session. Voices were hushed, faces tense and expectant. He shouldered his way through the crowd to the Lord's Round, glancing suspiciously up at the guards flanking the inlaid doors. They at least seemed the same as ever, their heavy visors giving nothing away. He crossed the antechamber, vivid tapestries flapping slightly in the draught, slipped through the inner doors, and passed into the vast, cool space beyond. His footsteps made tapping echoes in the gilded dome as he hurried down the aisle towards the high table. Gjallarhorn was standing beneath one of the tall windows, face splashed with colored light from the stained glass, frowning at a bench with a metal rail along its base which had been placed to one side of the floor.
What's going on? Haven't you heard? Gjallarhorn's voice was whispery with excitement. Hoff's let it be known there'll be some great matter to discuss. What is it? Angland? The Northmen? The big man shook his head. Don't know, but we'll soon see. Jezal frowned. I don't like surprises. His eye came to rest on the mysterious bench. What's that for? At that moment, the great doors were swung open and a stream of councillors began to flood down the aisle. The usual mixture, Jezal supposed, if a little more purposeful. The younger sons, the paid representatives. He caught his breath. There was a tall man at the front, richly dressed, even in this august company, with a weighty golden chain across his shoulders and a weighty frown across his face. Lord Brock himself, whispered Jezal. And there's Lord Isha. Gjallarhorn nodded at a sedate old man just behind Brock. And Huygen, and Barazin. It's something big, it has to be. Jezal took a deep breath as 4 of the Union's most powerful noblemen arranged themselves on the front row. He had never seen the Open Council half so well attended. On the councillors' half-circle of benches, there was barely an empty seat. High above them, the public gallery was an unbroken ring of nervous faces. Now Hoff blustered through the doors and down the aisle, and he was not alone. On his right, a tall man flowed along, slender and proud-looking, with a long, spotless white coat and a shock of white hair. Archlector Salt. On his left walked another man, leaning heavily on a stick, slightly bent in a robe of black and gold with a long grey beard. High Justice Morovia. Jezal could hardly believe his eyes. 3 members of the closed council here. Gjallarhorn hurried to take his place as the clerks deposited their burdens of ledgers and papers on the polished tabletop. The Lord Chamberlain threw himself down in their midst and immediately called for wine. The head of His Majesty's Inquisition swept into a high chair on one side of him, smiling faintly to himself. High Justice Morovia lowered himself slowly into another, frowning all the while. The volume of the anxious whispering in the hall rose a step. The faces of the great magnates on the front row were grim and suspicious. The announcer took his place before the table, not the usually brightly dressed imbecile, but a dark, bearded man with a barrel chest. He lifted his staff high, then beat it against the tiles, fit to wake the dead.
I call this meeting of the Open Council of the Union to order, he bellowed.
The hubbub gradually died away. There is but one matter for discussion this morning, said the Lord Chamberlain, peering sternly at the House from beneath his heavy brows. A matter of the King's justice. There were scattered mutterings. A matter concerning the royal license for trade in the city of Westport. The noise increased. Angry whispers, uncomfortable shufflings of noble asses on their benches, the familiar scratching of quills on the great ledgers.
Who said
Jezal saw Lord Brock's brows draw together, the corners of Lord Huygen's mouth turned down. They did not seem to like the taste of this. The Lord Chamberlain sniffed and took a swig of wine, waiting for the muttering to die away. I am not best qualified to speak on this matter, however.
No, indeed.
Snapped Lord Isher sharply, shifting in his seat on the front row with a scowl. Hoff fixed the old man with his eye. So I call on a man who is. My colleague from the closed council, Archlector
Why
Salt.
are you here?
The open council recognizes Archlector Salt.
Thundered the announcer, as the head of the Inquisition made his graceful way down the steps of the dais and onto the tiled floor, smiling pleasantly at the angry faces turned towards him.
My lords,
He began in a slow, musical voice, ushering his words out into space with smooth movements of his hands.
for the past 7 years, ever since our glorious victory in the war with Gurkle, an exclusive royal license for trade in the city of Westport has been in the hands of the Honorable Guild of Mercers.
And a fine job they've done of it,
Are you hunting
shouted
something?
Lord Huygen.
They won us that war.
Growled Barazin, pounding the bench beside him with a meaty fist. A fine job! Fine! Came the cries. The Archlector nodded as he waited for the noise to fade.
Indeed they have.
He said, pacing across the tiles like a dancer, his words scratching their way across the pages of the books.
I would be the last to deny it. Fine job.
He spun suddenly around, the tails of his white coat snapping, his face twisted into a brutal snarl.
A fine job of dodging the king's taxes.
He screamed. There was a collective gasp.
A fine job of slighting the king's law.
Another gasp, louder.
A fine job of high treason.
There was a storm of protest, of fists shaken in the air and papers thrown to the floor. Livid faces stared down from the public gallery. Florid ones ranted and bellowed from the benches before the high table. Giselle stared about him, unsure if he could have heard correctly.
How dare you shout?
Lord Block roared at the Archlector as he swished back up the steps of the dais, a faint smile clinging to his lips. We demand proof, bellowed Lord Boyden. We demand justice.
The king's justice.
Came cries from the back. You must supply us with proof, shouted Isha as the noise began to fade.